Nigeria's population growth and the issues of unemployment. What's the way out? But that's not a conversation for today. Let's move on. Tonight, it's about Nigeria's infrastructure and the fact that President Muhammadu Buhari plans to borrow more money. Wow. Today, the president went to the sent a request to the National Assembly to reconsider and approve the federal government's 2016 to 2018 external borrowing plan. The loan, according to him, is to execute key infrastructure projects across the country between 2016 and 2018. Nigeria's debt stock rises to 25.7 trillion naira over the last few years. The nation's debt profile rose from 24.95 trillion to 25.7 trillion in the last 4 months. A year ago, it was 22.38 trillion. You can see the difference of almost 3 trillion. The total domestic debt stood at 17.38 trillion, with the federal government having more than 3/4 of the stockpile. Well, now, the question is, why is Nigeria borrowing more money based on the request of the president? This request, the president highlighted that this was also sent to the 8th Assembly, but it was turned down. Can we afford the borrowings? Are we in trouble as a nation with the amount we're seeking as loans this time around, about $3 billion US dollars? That's what we gather we might be borrowing again. Let's get talking, everyone. I have joining me a former CBN governor and a former presidential candidate, Dr. Obadiah Mailafia. He joins us from our Abuja studio. Let me start by asking you, Dr. Mailafia. A lot of development experts have the opinion that there are some critical infrastructure that you cannot fix or you cannot tackle with your daily earnings, that you can probably just fix with borrowings. Well, that said, the question is that the president wanted to borrow this money, but the 8th Assembly turned it down. This time around, he's asking for it yet again. What are your views on the plans that this is going to be for infrastructure? Is it a good plan?
Well, let's put it this way. Our infrastructure needs are very huge vis-a-vis dwindling revenue. Depending on who you listen to, in fact, our infrastructure deficit in terms of funding would require something like $60–70 billion every year if we were really to meet our needs. And of course, if you look at it, our budget is never more than 9–10 billion trillion, never more than $25 billion. So the gap is very huge. So nobody is debating that. And we have to be realistic that a lot of this gap is going to have to be filled through borrowing, whether internal or external. What I want to say, first of all, is that what is happening is very alarming. The government inherited a debt exposure of probably not more than $5–7 billion, not up to $7 billion actually in 2015. Now it is $84 billion. $84 billion. That's 25 trillion naira. It's a staggering amount. And you ask yourself, what has this money really been used for? And I find it staggering and very alarming. We were involved in the debt negotiations with the Paris Club in 2005 that led to our exit from the Paris Club. At that time, our total national debt was no more than $36 billion. And even then, we were crying wolf who said this thing was just impossible. We needed a debt relief. And we negotiated, we paid it off. It was very painful, but we succeeded in doing that and exited ourselves from what really was debt peonage. And within a space of 5 years, to have accumulated such staggering debt is a matter of great concern. For me, the principle is not whether or not government can borrow. The issue is, what are you borrowing it for? And it is not enough to make a blanket statement like for infrastructures. No. I would want to see borrowing for specific project-based, project-linked funds. That their preparation of project has been done to an advanced level. We know what is going to come out of that project. We know the railway that is going to be built. We know the power station that is going to be built. And we have done the proper funding analysis so that the approval will be for specific projects. Don't forget, the first loan we took in 2015 was a 1.3 billion IDA loan for the Northeast. I've been to the Northeast a couple of times. There is nothing there to show for it. Therefore, I find the whole proposition very unsettling, dangerous, and unpatriotic.
Dr. Mailafia, if you look at what is happening, for example, in the rail sector, and perhaps what Mr. Fashola, the Minister for Works, is doing in terms of road infrastructure, the second Niger Bridge, and the Lagos-Ibadan Express Road, and some of the borrowings directly from the China Exim Bank, and some of what has been done with it in regard to railway and transportation. Are you encouraged by that? Would you say, in that regard, yes, it makes some sense to borrow?
Well, you know, Sheun, I worry, you mentioned the second Niger Bridge. I worry that a country that is almost 60 years, a country of the order of the stature of Nigeria, the Federal Republic of Nigeria, still has to borrow to build a goddamned bridge. Why? Why must we do that? As for the railways, I can understand. We can part borrow. But even that one, we have some intellectual capital because there were millions of people working in the railway line. Some of them are old now, retired, and some dead. But still, there are people with some level of technical know-how. They can work with our people. You know, we can develop our steel rolling industry, and then they will just help us design, and then we employ hundreds of thousands of our own youths and lay this thing. It is not quantum physics. It can be done. Why must we borrow such staggering amounts? And the one that really...
So, Mailafia, apologies to Button. I'd like for you to hold your thought for a moment. We've now since been joined on the program by the Director General of the Budget Office, Mr. Ben Akabueze. Thank you so much, Mr. Akabueze, for coming on tonight on the program. If you can give us an understanding, because it wasn't well captured, the details of how much will be borrowed. Is it 30 billion? Because that is the figure the president presented in 2016, which was supposed to be for 2016 to 2018 for infrastructure, fixing of infrastructure. How much is it the president is looking to borrow based on what he requested from the Senate today?
Well, I mean, essentially, as you know, there's a medium-term borrowing plan, and then there is the annual borrowing plan to fund the budget. For the 2020 budget, the deficit that needs to be financed by borrowing is 1.6 trillion naira. And that's the immediate request that I believe, would like to, the President would like the National Assembly to, to address. That 1.6 trillion naira is split between foreign currency and domestic, borrowing components almost evenly.
So, Mr. Akabueze, if you look at what our debt stock is about 25.7 trillion. as at October or so. So with 1.6 trillion, if it's approved, that means we'll be going to about 27 trillion. The question now is that for what purpose? It says for infrastructure. Dr. Obadiah was saying, do we have specific projects that the president is targeting to fix with his borrowing?
Well, essentially, the Fiscal Responsibility Act says that, we should borrow, essentially for, capital expenditure, unless, there are exceptions in circumstances where you can do otherwise. And yes, when you look at the budget, the capital budget, excluding the amount in statutory transfers, is 2.1 trillion. And if we're planning to borrow 1.6 trillion naira, it stands to reason that all of that is, targeted at the, capital component of the budget. This is the aggregate ceiling for borrowing. Within that ceiling, for instance, the Debt Management Office has a choice of instruments that it can use. Okay, whether it is project-tied bilateral or multilateral, debt, whether it's concessionary debt from World Bank or other ADB or other sources, or whether it is sukuk borrowing. These are tied to specific, projects.
But you've not mentioned on what this specific request by the president, to what project
No,
is he requesting?
these are, the budget, the capital budget includes thousands of projects. So, the debt can be used for any of those projects in the budget, as long as, yeah. So
Okay.
what I'm saying is, at the point of consummating the transaction, okay, that's when, that's when the debt, the specific debt is tied to any specific project as may be, necessary. But at this point in time, it's not, it's not necessary to tie the aggregate sum to.
Okay. So Mr. Akabueze, let's talk in a term or in a language that is understandable for an average Nigerian. Is the fact that what we are borrowing, it means that we don't have it, then we are taking it. But in fact, in our budget, we are servicing debt, and the money that the percentage of the debt servicing that we have is huge. Dr. Obadiah Mailafia is saying that he's not impressed by the borrowing and the infrastructure on the ground. The question is that, Mr. Akabueze, can you tell Nigerians that the borrowing is what Nigerians can afford? Can we afford this borrowing, or we are in trouble?
Every year we do in fact, biannually, we do a debt sustainability analysis, and that process is led by the Debt Management Office. And we would not be proposing to do any borrowings if they were not, if we thought that it was not sustainable. And so, we need to move away from the sentimental discussion on this subject, and speak hard facts. Right now, as you have heard us say repeatedly, and the Minister of Finance said so, on several occasions, lately, we do not believe that we have a debt problem. We do not have a debt sustainability problem yet. We have a serious revenue problem, a serious revenue challenge, which, if we do not fix, will lead us into a debt sustainability problem. And that's why the government is doing everything now, taking actions on several fronts to tackle the revenue problem. Right now, the one ratio that is of a major concern to everyone looking at our debt is the debt service to revenue ratio. But if you fix the revenues, the denominator, the debt service to revenue ratio will cease to be a problem. And
that seems to be the problem everybody is talking about. But because of our time, let me get to hear Dr. Obadiah's reaction to what he has said. We have just about 30 seconds to go, Dr. Mailafia. Your reaction to what you heard Mr. Akabueze said. What's the way out?
I have great respect for Ben. He's a true professional and a man of integrity. a public servant I regard very highly, but he's totally wrong, and he's the one being very sentimental. Let's look at the facts. The facts on ground, you are using 5 naira out of every 10 naira that you have to service your debt. And the IMF are telling you that, oh no, they're clapping for you, you are fine because your GDP to debt ratio is one of the lowest in West Africa. Who are you competing with in West Africa? None of those countries are worth anything. We should be competing with Brazil, Indonesia, and the rest. Those are our real comparators. And we don't have a debt crisis. Yes, I wouldn't use the word crisis, but we have a debt problem. Anybody that is using 5 naira out of every 10 naira he earns just to pay back his loans, and a lot of these loans he's been borrowing for consumption, for feeding, is a compound fool indeed. I'm sorry to use that language. And our situation, look, I'm not saying they shouldn't borrow, but let's have all the records and analytics of what has been done with all the money borrowed. I mean, $80 billion? That's not a joke, my friend.
Dr. Mailafia,
we
we need to leave it at that. But it's perhaps maybe unfair not to allow Mr. Akabueze to do that. But if you can do it in just one sentence, please, Mr. Akabueze, help me in one sentence, please. We need to close.
Well, as I said, we are working keenly to fix the revenue problems, and we just ask that everyone supports us. People express concern about the debt sustainability. We say we need to fix the revenues to address this. We've got developmental challenges that make it imperative to borrow at this time. You want to raise VAT, people are complaining. You do this, people are... There's no other way to generate these revenues.
We need to leave it at that because we are obviously out of time. Mr. Ben Akabueze, DG of the Budget Office, thank you so much for your time. And Dr. Obadiah Mailafia, thank you so much for talking to us tonight on the program. That's our show for tonight, everyone. Many thanks for watching. I'm Sean Kimale. Bye for now.